The church smells like lilies and lies. I'm sitting in the back row, wrapped in a black veil so thick that the world looks like it's been dipped in tar. My hands are folded in my lap, gloved fingers interlaced, and I'm watching my own funeral unfold before me like a stage play I never auditioned for. The organist is playing something somber. Bach, I think, though she's hitting every third note just slightly off key. It grates on my nerves. But then again, everything about this day grates on my nerves. There's a casket at the front of the church. Mahogany. Expensive. The kind I always said I didn't want because it seemed wasteful to bury good wood in the ground, where no one would ever see it again. But my children didn't know that, did they? Or perhaps they did, and they simply didn't care. The casket is closed, of course. They couldn't very well have an open casket when there was no body to display, because I'm not dead. I'm sitting right here, breathing the same stale air as everyone else, listening to the murmured condolences and watching the crocodile tears slide down faces that should know better. My heart is pounding so hard I can feel it in my throat, but my hands are steady. 82 years on this earth has taught me how to keep my composure when the world is crumbling around me. The pews are full. I recognize most of the faces. Distant cousins who never called. Old bridge partners who stopped inviting me to games 5 years ago. Neighbors who only spoke to me when they needed something. And there, in the front row, are my children. Victoria, my eldest. 57 years old with her father's jawline and my stubborn streak, though she's used hers in all the wrong ways. She's wearing a black dress that probably cost more than most people make in a month, and her shoulders are shaking with what anyone else might mistake for grief. But I know better. I raised her. I know the difference between real tears and performance. Beside her sits Marcus, my son, 53, with silver temples and a smile that could sell ice to penguins. He's got his arm around his sister, playing the role of supportive brother, but I can see his eyes darting around the church, cataloguing who's here, who matters, who might be useful later. Always networking, my Marcus, always working an angle. I watch them, and something inside me breaks all over again. Have you ever wondered who would truly cry at your funeral? I want to stand up right now and ask every person in this room. Have you ever thought about staging your own death just to see who actually gives a damn? Well, I didn't stage mine, not intentionally, but fate gave me a gift, a terrible, clarifying gift, and I'm about to use it. If you value loyalty over money, please subscribe and like this video. Let's find out the truth together. Let me tell you how I got here. Let me tell you how Eleanor Margaret Ashford, that's me, though I've always just gone by Margaret, ended up attending her own funeral in the back row of St. Michael's Episcopal Church on a grey Tuesday morning in October. It started 3 weeks ago. I have a house on the coast, not a beach house exactly, more of an estate that happens to sit on 15 acres overlooking the Atlantic Ocean. My late husband, Richard, bought it 40 years ago when he made his fortune in shipping and logistics. It's been my home ever since. 3 stories, 12 bedrooms, a library that smells like leather and old paper, and gardens that bloom in every season. It's the kind of place that requires a full-time staff to maintain, though over the years I've whittled that down to just 3 people. My housekeeper, Carmen, my gardener, old Tom Fletcher, and my personal assistant, a sharp young woman named Sophie who handles my correspondence and appointments. I love that house. Every creaking floorboard, every drafty window, every rosebush in the garden that I planted with my own hands. It's mine, or it was mine, or it is mine. Tense gets complicated when you're supposed to be dead. 3 weeks ago, I decided to take my boat out. I've had the same sailboat for 20 years, a 32-footer named Second Wind, because I bought it right after Richard died, and I needed something to prove I could still start over. I'm not reckless with it. I check the weather. I file a float plan. I wear my life jacket. But I'm also not afraid of the ocean. You can't live on the coast for 4 decades and be afraid of the water. The morning I left, the forecast was clear. Mild winds, moderate swells, nothing a woman with 40 years of sailing experience couldn't handle. I told Carmen I'd be back by dinner. I kissed her cheek, something I always did before going out on the water, a little ritual we'd developed. and I drove down to the marina. The sea was beautiful that day, crystalline blue, the kind of color you can't quite capture in photographs. I sailed out past the breakwater, feeling the sun on my face and the wind filling the sails, and for a few hours I forgot about everything else. I forgot about the phone calls I'd been getting from Victoria, asking about estate planning and future arrangements. I forgot about Marcus showing up unannounced last month with a real estate developer friend who kept talking about the potential of my property. I forgot about the argument I'd had with both of them 3 weeks prior, when they'd sat me down like I was a child and suggested I might want to consider moving into something more manageable, by which they meant a retirement home where they could sell my house and split the profits. Out on the water, I was just Margaret, not somebody's mother, not somebody's meal ticket, just a woman and her boat and the endless sky. And then the storm came. It appeared out of nowhere, the way storms sometimes do on the Atlantic. One moment the sky was clear, and the next, dark clouds were rolling in like smoke, blotting out the sun. The wind picked up. The waves grew teeth. I tried to turn back, but the storm was faster than me, and before I knew it, I was in the middle of hell. I've been through rough weather before, but this was different. This was personal. The waves weren't just tall, they were angry, reaching up like hands trying to pull me down. Water poured over the deck. The boat tilted at impossible angles. I clung to the wheel, my knuckles white, my heart hammering, and I prayed to a God I hadn't spoken to in years. And then a wave hit me. Not the boat, me. A wall of water that came from the side and swept me clean off the deck like I weighed nothing. I remember the shock of the cold, the way it drove the air from my lungs. I remember going under, tumbling in the dark, not knowing which way was up. I remember thinking, with perfect clarity, this is how it ends. But it didn't end. I broke the surface, gasping, coughing up seawater. My life jacket kept me afloat, but barely. The storm was still raging, and my boat, my beautiful second wind, was already too far away, being tossed by the waves like a toy. I screamed for help, but there was no one to hear me, just the wind and the water and the horrible realization that I was alone. I don't remember much after that. The Coast Guard report would later say I was in the water for 6 hours. 6 hours. By all rights, I should have died from hypothermia. My body should have shut down. But I'm a stubborn old woman, and I've never done what I was supposed to do. I remember fragments, the taste of salt, the burn in my muscles, the way the sky started to clear just as I was certain I couldn't hold on any longer. And then, through the haze of exhaustion, I saw land. Not my land. Some rocky stretch of coastline 15 miles north of where I'd launched. I don't remember swimming to shore. I think the current just carried me there. But I remember crawling onto the rocks, feeling them scrape my palms and knees, and then collapsing face first onto a bed of wet sand. When I woke up, it was dark, and I was freezing. My teeth were chattering so hard I thought they might break. I was still wearing my life jacket and the remnants of my sailing clothes, but they were soaked through and crusted with salt. Every muscle in my body screamed when I tried to move. But I was alive. I managed to stand, managed to stumble inland through the scrub brush and pine trees until I saw lights. A house. Small, weathered, the kind of place that looks like it's been standing since before I was born. I knocked on the door and a man answered. Elderly, suspicious, holding a baseball bat like he thought I might be there to rob him. Help, I managed to croak. Please. His expression changed. He saw my face, my soaked clothes, the way I was shaking, and whatever suspicion he'd had melted away. He pulled me inside, wrapped me in blankets, made me hot tea that I could barely hold because my hands were shaking so badly. His name was Arthur Pembrose, 79 years old, widower, living alone in his family's old fishing cabin. He didn't have a phone, not a cell phone anyway, just an old landline that had been disconnected years ago when he decided he didn't want to talk to anyone anymore. We'll get you to a hospital, he said. In the morning. Storm's still too bad to drive. I nodded. I was too exhausted to argue. He set me up in his spare room, and I slept for 14 hours straight. When I woke up, Arthur made me breakfast. Eggs and toast and coffee so strong it could strip paint. We sat at his kitchen table. and he told me about his life, his late wife, his children who'd moved away and never visited. And I told him what had happened to me. Should call someone, he said. Let them know you're alive. They'll be worried. I nodded. Yes, yes, you're right. But something stopped me. Some instinct I couldn't quite name. Instead of asking Arthur to drive me to a phone, I asked him to take me to the nearest town, a little place called Harbourview, about 20 miles up the coast. I told him I needed to get my bearings, figure out what had happened to my boat, contact the Coast Guard. What I really wanted was to see the news, to find out if anyone was looking for me. Arthur drove me to Harbourview in his ancient pickup truck, and we stopped at a diner with free Wi-Fi. I borrowed his tablet. He had one for reading the news, even if he didn't have a phone, and I searched my own name. What I found made my blood run cold. The first article was from 3 days after I'd gone missing. Local woman lost at sea. It described how my boat had been found adrift, damaged but intact, with no sign of me. It mentioned that the Coast Guard had conducted a search. It quoted Victoria saying, "Our mother was an experienced sailor, but the sea can be unpredictable. We're praying for a miracle." The second article was from 5 days after. Search called off for missing sailor. The Coast Guard had suspended active search operations. I was officially presumed dead. And then, the third article. This one was from 8 days after I'd gone missing. Ashford family files death certificate for presumed drowned matriarch. I read it 3 times, certain I'd misunderstood. But no, there it was, in black and white. My children had filed a death certificate, not after weeks of searching, not after exhausting every possible option. 8 days. They'd waited 8 days before declaring me dead and starting the legal process to access my estate. I sat in that diner booth, staring at the screen, and something inside me crystallized into pure, diamond-hard clarity. They hadn't hired a private search team, even though I had more than enough money to pay for one. They hadn't organized volunteer searches. They hadn't done anything except wait the minimum legal time required before they could declare me dead and start dividing up my assets. "You all right?" Arthur asked, watching my face. "No," I said. "I'm really not." I spent the next week in Harbourview, staying at a bed and breakfast and trying to process what I'd learned. I called Sophie from a burner phone. She was the only person I trusted, and swore her to secrecy. She was shocked to hear my voice, started crying immediately, said she'd been devastated when she heard the news. I believed her. Sophie had been with me for 5 years, and unlike my children, she'd never once asked me about my will or my estate plans. "Don't tell anyone I'm alive," I told her. "Not yet. But Miss Ashford, please, Sophie, I need you to trust me. I need to see something." She was quiet for a long moment. Then, "What do you need me to do?" "I need you to keep your ear to the ground. Tell me what Victoria and Marcus are doing. Tell me everything." And she did. Over the next 2 weeks, Sophie fed me information. She told me that Victoria had already contacted real estate agents about listing my house, that Marcus had been going through my financial records, tallying up accounts, calculating net worth, that they'd scheduled the funeral for 3 weeks after my death, the soonest they could do it while still seeming appropriately grief-stricken. She also told me something else, something that made me realize I needed to attend that funeral. Carmen, my housekeeper, had been fired. Victoria had let her go 2 days after I was declared dead, claiming they couldn't afford to keep paying staff for a house they were about to sell. Never mind that Carmen had been with me for 15 years. Never mind that I'd put a provision in my will specifically to ensure she'd be taken care of. Victoria didn't care. Carmen was just another expense to eliminate. When Sophie told me that Carmen had been crying, that she'd begged to at least stay until after the funeral so she could say goodbye properly, and that Victoria had refused, that's when I made my decision. I was going to that funeral, not as a ghost, not as a surprise happy reunion, but as a reckoning. I had Sophie arrange everything quietly. She bought me the black dress, the veil, the gloves. She made sure I could get into the church without anyone recognizing me. And she promised, absolutely promised, that she wouldn't tell a soul I was alive until I gave her permission. Which brings me back to now, to this moment, to me sitting in the back row of St. Michael's Episcopal Church, watching the funeral service for a woman who isn't dead. The priest, Father Dominic, a man I've known for 30 years, is giving the opening remarks. He's talking about loss and memory and the hope of resurrection. He's good at this. His voice has that quality that makes you want to believe everything will be okay, even when you know it won't. We gather today to remember and celebrate the life of Eleanor Margaret Ashford, he says, and I have to bite the inside of my cheek to keep from laughing. Celebrate. What a word. Victoria stands to give the first eulogy. She walks to the podium slowly, dabbing at her eyes with a handkerchief. She's good at this too. I taught her well, even if I didn't mean to. In our family, appearance was everything. We Ashfords don't show weakness. We don't let people see us crack. Except now I'm seeing exactly how well she learned that lesson. My mother, Victoria begins, her voice breaking just slightly, was the strongest woman I've ever known. Past tense. She's already buried me in her mind. She raised us to be independent, to be resilient, to never give up. She taught us that family was the most important thing in the world, and that we should always look out for each other. I watch her, and I think about all the times she called me in the past year, not to ask how I was doing, not to invite me to dinner or suggest we spend time together, but to ask about my assets, about my accounts, about whether I'd considered updating my will to make things simpler for everyone. She loved the ocean, Victoria continues. It's fitting in a way that she was taken by the thing she loved most. She died doing what she loved. Except I didn't die. And if I had, it would have been because my children were too busy calculating inheritance taxes to bother looking for me. Victoria finishes her eulogy to polite applause. A few people are crying. I wonder if they knew me at all, or if they're just crying because that's what you do at funerals. Then Marcus stands up. My son. My clever, ambitious, utterly hollow son. He walks to the podium with his head bowed, the picture of dignified grief. When he speaks, his voice is steady, controlled. A businessman, even in mourning. My mother built an empire, he says. She took what my father started and turned it into something extraordinary. She was brilliant, strategic, and uncompromising. She taught me everything I know about business, about negotiation, about never settling for less than you deserve. I listened to my son's eulogy. It's a beautiful speech. It's also a lie. Because yes, I taught Marcus about business, but I also tried to teach him about integrity, about loyalty, about understanding that money is just a tool, not a measure of worth. He learned the first lessons. He ignored the second ones. The legacy she leaves behind, Marcus says, is one we'll cherish forever, and we'll make sure that everything she built continues to thrive. By selling it, that's what he means. By liquidating my assets and splitting the proceeds. By turning my life's work into a bank balance. He sits down. More applause. More tears. And then I see her, Carmen. She's sitting near the middle of the church, 3 rows back from my children. She's wearing a simple black dress. Nothing expensive. Nothing fancy. Her shoulders are shaking, and she's crying into a handkerchief that looks like it's been used so many times it's falling apart. Real tears. Real grief. I watch her and my heart breaks. Carmen came to work for me 15 years ago, right after she immigrated from the Philippines. She was scared, barely spoke English, desperate for a job that would help her support her family back home. I hired her on the spot. Over the years, she became more than just my housekeeper. She became my friend. We had coffee together every morning. She told me about her children, her grandchildren, her dreams of bringing them all to America someday. I helped her with her English. I helped her study for her citizenship test. When she passed, I threw her a party, and Victoria fired her without a second thought. I look from Carmen to my children, and I feel the last shred of doubt dissolve. The service continues. More hymns, more prayers, More people standing up to share memories of me, most of them surface level, things they could have learned from an obituary. She was gracious. She was generous. She will be missed. Will I? Will I really? Father Dominic finishes his final prayer and then says something that makes my pulse quicken. If anyone would like to share any final words, now is the time. The church is silent. People shift in their pews, but no one stands. And then I do. The veil obscures my vision, but I can feel everyone's eyes turning toward me as I rise from the back row. My cane clicks against the floor. I don't really need it, but it makes me look frailer than I am. And right now, that works in my favor. I start walking down the center aisle. Click, click, click. The sound echoes in the silence. People are whispering, murmuring, trying to figure out who I am. An old friend, a distant relative, someone who knew me well enough to want to speak, but wasn't important enough to be on the program. I keep walking. My heart is pounding, but my hands are steady. I've played this moment over in my mind 100 times. Now it's real. I reach the front of the church. Father Dominic looks at me with kind, questioning eyes. He doesn't recognize me. Not yet. I turn to face the congregation. I can see Victoria and Marcus in the front row, both of them frowning slightly, trying to place me. Victoria leans over and whispers something to her brother, probably asking if he knows who I am. I reach up and lift my veil. The church explodes. Someone screams. I think it's Victoria. Marcus makes a sound like he's been punched in the stomach. People are gasping, half standing, pointing at me like I'm an apparition. "Hello, everyone," I say, my voice clear and strong. I'm so sorry to interrupt my own funeral. Victoria's face has gone white. She looks like she's about to faint. Marcus is staring at me with his mouth open, and for once in his life, he has absolutely nothing to say. "Mum?" Victoria finally manages. Her voice is thin, reedy, nothing like the confident eulogy she delivered 5 minutes ago. "Mum, is that how you thought I was dead?" I finished for her. "Yes, I know, because you declared me dead." I let that hang in the air for a moment. Let everyone absorb it. But I'm not dead. As you can see, I'm very much alive. And I have to say, I'm touched by how long you waited before filing that death certificate. 8 days. 8 days before you decided I was gone forever and started dividing up my estate. Marcus finds his voice. "Mum, we can explain." "Can you?" I turn to look at him. "My son. My beautiful, terrible son. Please, explain to me why you didn't hire a private search team. I know you saw the cost. Sophie showed me the estimate you rejected. $50,000 to keep looking for me. You deemed it not cost-effective. The church is dead silent now. Everyone is listening. Everyone is watching. Explain to me," I continue, turning back to Victoria, "why you fired Carmen 2 days after I was declared dead. She worked for me for 15 years. She loved me. She actually grieved for me. And you kicked her out of my house like she was nothing." Victoria's mouth opens and closes, but no sound comes out. "You're not crying because you missed me," I say, and my voice is hard now, sharp as a knife. "You're crying because you know I am still the executor of the will, and I am making some changes." I hear gasps, more whispers. Someone in the back says, "Oh my God." "You see," I continue, "I've had 3 weeks to think about my life, about what I've built and who I want to leave it to. 3 weeks to watch from a distance as my children proved exactly what they value." I look at Victoria. "You couldn't wait 2 weeks before trying to sell my house, my home, the place I lived for 40 years with your father. You had real estate agents touring it before I was even officially declared dead." I turn to Marcus. "And you? You went through my financial records like they were a shopping catalogue, tallying up accounts, calculating net worth, making plans for money that wasn't yours." "Mum, please," Marcus says. And now he's standing, his hands out like he's trying to calm a spooked horse. "You don't understand. We were devastated. We were just trying to handle the practical aspects while we grieved." "Don't." My voice cracks like a whip. "Don't you dare tell me you were grieving. I watched you, Marcus. I've been here this whole time. I saw you on your phone during the hymns. I saw you checking your watch during Victoria's eulogy. And I saw you whispering to that real estate developer during the opening prayer." His face flushes red. "Caught. I turn to address the entire congregation now, these people who came to mourn me, these people who will now bear witness to what I'm about to do. I want everyone here to know something, I say. My will, the one that Victoria and Marcus have been so eager to execute, leaves everything split evenly between my two children. My house, my money, my investments, everything. I wrote it that way because I believed in family. I believed that blood meant something. I pause. Let that sink in. But I've learned something in the past 3 weeks. I've learned that blood doesn't mean anything if there's no love behind it. And my children don't love me. They love what I have. They love what I represent. But me, the actual person. They buried her 8 days after she went missing. Victoria is crying now. Really crying. But I don't think they're tears of remorse. I think they're tears of fear. So here's what's going to happen, I say. I'm going to my lawyer's office tomorrow morning, and I'm going to rewrite my will. Everything, my house, my estate, my accounts, will go to the one person who actually looked for me, the one person who refused to believe I was gone, the one person who loved me enough to keep hoping. I turn and look directly at Carmen. Her eyes are wide, her hand pressed to her mouth. Carmen Reyes, I say, and my voice softens. You organized volunteer search parties. You went out on boats with local fishermen looking for me. You refused to leave my house even when Victoria tried to fire you. You told her you'd work for free until I was found. You believed I was alive when everyone else had given up. Carmen is crying so hard now she can barely breathe. Miss Margaret, she whispers. My estate, I continue, will go to you. All of it. The house, the money, everything. Because you're the only person in this church who actually mourned me. The church erupts. People are shouting, talking over each other. Victoria is screaming something about legal challenges. Marcus is saying this can't be legal, that I can't do this, that I'm clearly not in my right mind. Father Dominic is trying to restore order, his hands raised, calling for calm. But I'm not done. There's more, I say, and my voice cuts through the chaos. Everyone goes silent again. Victoria, Marcus, I want you to know that I don't hate you. I'm disappointed in you. I'm heartbroken by you. But I don't hate you. Victoria's face crumples. For a moment, she looks like the little girl I used to tuck into bed at night, the one who was afraid of thunderstorms and cried when her goldfish died. I gave you everything, I say quietly. Everything I had, everything I was. I loved you more than my own life. And when it mattered, when I actually needed you, you couldn't be bothered to look for me. You wrote me off. You moved on. Mum, please, Victoria sobs. We can fix this. We can make this right. No, I say. You can't. Because I'm not dead. And I'm not going to pretend this didn't happen. You showed me who you really are, and I believe you. I turn away from them and walk back down the aisle. My cane clicks against the floor. People are still staring, still murmuring, but I don't care. I'm done caring what people think. As I reach the back of the church, I stop and turn around one more time. Oh, and one more thing, I say. The funeral expenses? I checked the bill. $12,000 for a funeral I didn't need. You can pay for that yourselves. Consider it a lesson in premature mourning. And then I walk out of the church into the bright October morning, leaving my children and their tears behind. The aftermath was exactly as messy as you'd expect. Victoria and Marcus tried to contest the new will. They hired lawyers, filed motions, claimed I was suffering from trauma-induced mental incompetence. They argued that no one in their right mind would give away a $30 million estate to a housekeeper over their own children. The courts disagreed. I was examined by 3 different psychiatrists, all of whom concluded I was perfectly sound of mind. I gave depositions. I explained everything: the boat, the storm, the rescue, the watching and waiting. I showed them the articles, the timeline, the proof that my children had rushed to declare me dead. And I won. Carmen tried to refuse the inheritance. She came to me crying, saying it was too much, that she couldn't accept it, that she was just doing what anyone would do. No, I told her, holding her hands. Not anyone. Most people wouldn't have done what you did. Most people would have given up. But your children, my children will be fine, I said. They have their own money, their own careers. They don't need mine. But you have grandchildren in Manila who deserve better. You have a family who needs support, and you have a heart that deserves to be rewarded." She cried harder. So did I. We set her up with financial advisors, lawyers, people who could help her navigate the sudden wealth. She was terrified at first, convinced she'd mess something up, lose it all. But Carmen is smarter than she gives herself credit for. Within 6 months, she'd set up trust funds for her grandchildren, bought a house for her daughter, and established a scholarship program for Filipino immigrants. She also insisted I stay in my house. "Is your home," she said firmly. "I don't need big house. You stay. I take care of you like always." So that's what we did. I still live in my house on the coast. Carmen still makes my coffee every morning, and every evening we sit on the terrace and watch the sunset over the ocean, and we talk about everything and nothing. I don't go sailing anymore. The ocean and I have come to an understanding. I respect its power, and it lets me look at it from a safe distance. As for Victoria and Marcus, we're not estranged exactly. We're just distant. They call occasionally. Stiff, awkward conversations where no one mentions the funeral or the will or the fact that they left me for dead. Last Christmas, they sent cards. I sent cards back. Maybe someday we'll find our way back to each other. Maybe we won't. But I've made my peace with it, because I learned something important in those 3 weeks I spent being dead. You can't make people love you the way you love them. You can't force them to be who you need them to be. All you can do is recognize who they actually are and decide whether that's enough. For me, it wasn't. And I'd rather live with that truth than die without knowing it. I'm sitting on my terrace now, watching the sun set over the Atlantic. The sky is turning that particular shade of orange gold that looks like the world is on fire. Carmen is in the kitchen making dinner, something with garlic and herbs that smells like heaven. My phone buzzes. A text from Sophie. "There's a reporter who wants to interview you about what happened. Should I tell them no?" I think about it for a moment, then type back. Tell them yes, but only if they're willing to talk about Carmen's scholarship fund. Because that's the story I want told. Not the one about the bitter old woman who cut her children out of her will, but the one about the immigrant housekeeper who refused to give up hope. The one about loyalty and love and what actually matters. Sophie texts back a thumbs up emoji. I set my phone down and look out at the water. Somewhere out there is where I almost died, where I went under the waves and thought I'd never surface again, where I lost my boat and my bearings and nearly lost my life. But I didn't die. I survived. And in surviving, I learned exactly who I could count on. Not the people I'd given birth to, not the people who shared my blood, but the people who shared my values. The people who saw me as a person, not a bank account. That's worth more than any inheritance. Carmen comes out onto the terrace with 2 glasses of wine. She hands me one and sits down beside me, and together we watch the sun disappear into the ocean, painting the world in shades of red and gold. "Beautiful," she says softly. "Yes," I agree. "It really is. And for the first time in a long time, I mean it. They wanted my fortune, but they got a ghost instead. Share this story to warn ungrateful children everywhere. And answer me this in the comments. If you could attend your own funeral invisibly, what do you think you would see? I'll be reading your answers. Because I want to know. I want to know if I'm the only one who's ever wondered. The only one who's ever feared that the people they love might not love them back the same way. And if you have people in your life like Carmen, people who would search for you, who would refuse to give up, who would love you for who you are and not what you have, hold on to them, protect them, value them, because they're rarer than any fortune. They're worth more than gold. 6 months after the funeral, I got a letter in the mail. No return address, but I recognized the handwriting immediately. Victoria. I almost didn't open it, almost threw it away. But curiosity got the better of me, and I slid my finger under the envelope flap. Inside was a single page, covered in my daughter's familiar script. "Mom, I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't expect you to understand. But I need to say this, even if you never read it. You were right. We failed you. I failed you. Not just in those 8 days, but long before that. I got so focused on what came next, on planning, on preparing, on protecting our future, that I forgot to be your daughter. I forgot to just be with you. Marcus feels the same way, though he's too proud to admit it. We both do. I know we can't undo what we did. I know we proved exactly what you suspected about us. But I want you to know that I'm sorry. I'm sorry for rushing to bury you. I'm sorry for firing Carmen. I'm sorry for treating your life like it was just a balance sheet to be settled. And I'm sorry for not telling you I loved you more often. Because I do. I did. I always have. Even when I was too busy or too distracted or too focused on other things to show it. I don't know if we'll ever be close again. I don't know if you even want that. But I needed you to know that I'm sorry and that I'm proud of what you did, giving everything to Carmen. She deserved it more than we did. I'm trying to be better. I'm not sure I'm succeeding, but I'm trying. I love you, Mom. I always will. Victoria. I read the letter 3 times. Then I folded it carefully and put it in my desk drawer. I didn't respond, not right away, but I kept the letter. Because maybe, someday, we'll find our way back to each other. Maybe we'll rebuild what was broken. Maybe we won't. But at least now, she knows. She knows what she did. She knows what it cost. And that's a start. It's been a year now since I walked into my own funeral. A year since I lifted that veil and watched my children's faces crumble. A year since I gave away my fortune and reclaimed my life. People ask me if I regret it, if I wish I'd handled things differently, if I ever think about reconciling with Victoria and Marcus, about rewriting the will again, about giving them another chance. And my answer is always the same. No. Because some lessons can only be learned the hard way, some truths can only be revealed in crisis, and some people will only show you who they really are when they think you're not watching. My children thought I was dead, and they showed me exactly how much I mattered to them. That's not something I can forget. It's not something I can forgive easily. But it's also not something I regret knowing, because now I know the truth, and truth, however painful, is better than illusion. I'd rather live in a world where I know exactly who loves me than die in a world where I'm surrounded by pretty lies. Carmen just came out to tell me dinner is ready. She's made adobo, my favorite. The smell is making my mouth water. Coming, I call out, and I push myself up from my chair. My joints protest. 82 years of living will do that, but I ignore them. I've survived worse than a little arthritis. As I walk inside, I glance back at the ocean one more time. The sun has fully set now, and the water is dark, reflecting the first stars of the evening. Somewhere out there is where I almost died, where I went under and thought I'd never come back up. But I did come back up. I survived. I learned. I changed. And I'm still here, still breathing, still living, still making choices about who gets to be part of my life and who doesn't. That's not something my children can buy or inherit or claim as their birthright. That's mine, and I'm keeping it.